Hey guys, it's Troy here, and I'm doing a video that I really didn't intend to do at first, but I figured I would anyway because I got this pen just today in the mail. You know, occasionally I look for bargains on Etsy. I also look at a few other shopping sites as well, and I've been able to bang a bargain here or there, and occasionally not so much, but I often do find a pen that I'm going to enjoy. This particular pen is one that I found fairly inexpensively. As a matter of fact, it was only like 30 bucks. And I got the right here on Etsy. SPV Woodworking is the shop. You know, and there's their location on Etsy. And you know, a fountain pen in Cocobolo, and it was only 30 bucks. Now, when I looked at it, you know, of course you got shipping and you've got tax, so all total $37.50 shipped to my door. And I figured, you know, why not? I got a few extra bucks, and it looked kind of cool. And I honestly, I only ordered it because of the Cocobolo wood. I don't have any Cocobolo wood pens here in my collection. So when I was perusing it, you know, I put it on my favorites or my watch list on Etsy, and occasionally I looked at it, I don't know. Then eventually I finally said, okay, why not? So I went ahead and ordered it, and I knew it was going to be a kit pen. You know, essentially they just did the turning on the wood and put it together with a kit. And there's a couple sure signs of that usually, in that it looks very standardized here. Nothing at all is going to have any kind of branding or personalization on it, and oftentimes they're going to come with this right here, an IPG or Iridium Point Germany nib. And I've just gotten to the point now where I just replace them immediately. I don't even bother trying an IPG nib. Sometimes they write great. Sometimes they write horribly. And just because it says IPG or Iridium Point Germany, it doesn't mean there's any iridium on it, and it doesn't mean that they're made in Germany. I'll leave some articles down below, which I've done many times. In the description of this video, I'll put in some links to some articles on what IPG or Iridium Point Germany actually means. Now, taking a look at this, you can see on the dome here, it's actually a plastic or an acrylic, and it's got the clip. And this is like a satin gold finish. That doesn't mean it's actual gold, of course, but just the color of it. And then you've got the cap band here, and you do have a screw here for posting, and then you've got the taper down here to a plastic end. So one of the things I do like about pens that sometimes are in a kit, they do think of things like that, where it comes and it screws on if you want to do it that way. Cocobolo, I've always kind of liked the wood, you know, it's a cool sounding wood. I mean, anyway, I've been thinking about eventually, and I've seen some very expensive Cocobolo pens from some custom makers, and I decided I didn't want to spend 10 times the price of this in order to get it and try it and play with it. Looking here at the section, you know, it's a fairly standard, you know, kit pen style section. So you get the black acrylic here, and you've got a little bit of a gold finish there, and you've got the screws here. And it's kind of a good long throw here, so it's long enough to be able to grip fairly well, and it doesn't bite into your fingers when you go to use it. And I replaced this nib immediately. I have some number 5 nibs in a drawer over here, and actually I've got more Iridium Point Germany or IPG nibs, and some even some old nibs from some vintage stock that I acquired in my little number 5 drawer. I'm running low because I only have one number 5 nib for replacement that I really feel comfortable using. I use nibs, generally I've been buying ones from that are for Nemesine. Now Nemesine I've been getting through Birmingham Pens, because the brother of the guy who owns Birmingham Pens owned Nemesine, and Nemesine was getting their nibs from Yovo. So I was able to get some of their clearance nibs when they had a big sale going on, and I bought like a half a dozen of them, and I've about used them all up. I think I've got one left, and they are in a fine point. So I went ahead and I got this, and to me it's a really good looking pen. You know, it's something that I wouldn't hesitate to be able to use in a business meeting, or to throw in my pocket and carry it as a daily carry. And I'm not here actually to pimp the pen. I'm actually here to talk about something. Number one, the IPG nib. But number two, one of the things that I did is when I took this nib out, I took the nib and the feed right out of the end of that section because I wanted to replace it. And then it had like brown crud all over my hands. Actually, I've washed up pretty good where I don't have any left on my hands, but I think I took a picture of what some of the crud. It may be a little difficult to see in these pictures. It wasn't the greatest of lighting, but on the back of this nib right here was all kinds of crud, and you can see I didn't scrub it. There's still just a little bit of crudness on the back of that nib that you may be able to see. So I mean, it was all kinds of, some people call it like schmutz, you know, and garbage in here. And in the comb of that feed, there was all kinds of dried up and goop, and my hands were getting all nice and inky. So I took it, I cleaned that just by running it under some water, so I was able to get that, at least the feed, fairly clean, so I felt comfortable putting it back together, and used that new unused Yovo Nemesine nib, so I put that together for the number 5. And this is a cartridge converter pen, and it did come with a fairly inexpensive plastic converter, and I went ahead and filled that up and tested it out. And I've only written with it just a brief little bit, so I haven't done a whole lot, and I'm not trying to do a full review. And they did throw in a converter, so I've got a standard international converter they threw in a little baggie, so I've got that. And here's what I did. I filled it with Thornton's brown. I've got 2 main browns that I use in my collection. I've got some browns that are in little tiny vials for samples, but there are 2 main brown inks that I use as either Thornton's, and be honest with you, I'm not displeased with Thornton's inks, and they are made, I believe, in Eastern Europe, and Waterman's Absolute Brown. I use that a lot too. So those are my 2 go-tos if we're going to use brown. And the only reason I'm using brown is because of the Cocobolo. But let's go ahead and put nib to paper. You know, when I do put that on, by the way, that does backweight that pen just a little bit. A little more than I feel comfortable with. It's not that you can't write with it, but I don't like it quite as much for the balance. So let's go ahead and look at this kit pen in Cocobolo wood, and this has the number 5 Nemesine replacement. Nib. You know, this is, like I said, as far as I know, these were made by Yovo rather than by Bach, and they're a fairly rigid nib. I don't expect a whole lot of line variation out of them, but here's what I do expect. I expect a Yovo nib to perform, and to perform well. And this is a fine nib. I'm not much on fine nibs. However, I can deal with a good fine nib that writes well and smooth. I'll take that over a broad or a medium or even a 1.1 stub that writes horrible or horribly. But this is actually a good smooth nib. As soon as I put it in here and inked it up, I had no problems. So here are my recommendations. If you're going to look at getting a fairly inexpensive pen, or you're just into cheap pens in general, you know, I was never into the idea of, there are people I know who love to buy a bunch of Jinhaos, and then they'll throw in like a $15 to $30 nib. I'm like, why would you spend like, you know, $3 on a pen and to spend like 5 times as much on a nib kind of thing? And I'm a bottom feeder when it comes to nibs. I'll look for a good price to stock up. I don't need to have them, but I like to have them. I actually have a bunch of number 5 Jinhao nibs in that little container because I've actually swapped out some nibs, yes, in Jinhaos. Or because I found a few Jinhao nibs that weren't so good, I swapped Jinhao nibs with Jinhao nibs and got one that worked. Or I swapped a Jinhao nib with something like an Iridium Point Germany nib that I knew worked halfway decent and better than the Jinhao nib I had. So, there's always some options out there. So my advice is to get a few extra nibs. And keep those around. And on this one, this is a custom maker or a guy who's a woodworker who uses, kit pens. So, it's not a kitless, but I'm a little disappointed that, the pen came with all kinds of schmutz in it. I don't know if it's from, a test writing and never cleaned it out afterwards. I have no idea. All I know is there was gunk in it, and I'm glad that I took it out to replace the nib immediately, or else I'd have been really disappointed when I went to go write with it, let's say, and it wrote horribly because it had a bunch of gunk on the nib and on the feed. So, I've just gotten to the point, like I said, with IPG nibs, I don't even bother trying to write with them to see if it writes well. I've just gotten to that point in life where I don't want to mess with it. I've gotten to that point in my hobby where, yeah, I want an interesting pen. I kind of, I like a good pen. But as you've seen in other videos, I'll just pull that nib right out, get rid of it, and put in something that I know is going to write well. And it's time for me to stock up on some more number 5 Yovo nibs and keep those here in my collection. But, don't hesitate that if you see something, especially if you get some extra nibs. And I kind of knew I was going to need to do that when I first saw this pen, because I kind of figured it's a kit, and if it has a kit, it's going to come with an IPG nib, and I don't even want to tinker with IPG nibs anymore. Like I said, I'm just at the point in life where, nope, not going to do it.